All right, so today we're doing something a little different. We're not actually reviewing a film. We're deconstructing a playbook. We're going to dive deep into a detailed critique of the movie Dhurandhar to really understand the powerful and, yeah, pretty controversial techniques of what one source is calling modern propaganda. So let's get right into it.
So picture this. Imagine you're watching a movie, okay? The year is 2019, and an Indian spy over in Pakistan uncovers this terrible plan to attack a convoy in Pulwama. He sends warning after warning, but the attack, it happens anyway. How? Well, in the film's crazy, shocking climax, the spy finds a secret recording, and on it, a character who is very clearly based on the Prime Minister is heard colluding with Pakistan's ISI, saying an attack like this would be a big advantage in the election.
I mean, what a shocking story, right? But here's the thing. This hypothetical film, which the source calls Bhavandar, is just a setup. The whole argument we're exploring today is that this exact narrative, implying treason at the very, very top, is the alleged strategy behind the actual film Dhurandhar. So the real question becomes, how on earth does a movie manage to plant such an explosive message? And this really gets to the heart of the whole critique. I mean, anyone can spot clumsy, obvious propaganda a mile away, but the source argues that the real danger, that comes from propaganda that is really well made. When the storytelling is just so good, so engaging, the audience can get so captivated by the plot that they don't even realize a message is being planted in their minds.
Yeah, and to really drive this point home, the source brings up this quote from the famous critic Suzanne Sontag. The argument isn't just that Dhurandhar is propaganda. It's that the film is allegedly so powerful because it's good cinema. It's not something you can just dismiss as trash. No, it's analyzed as a really engaging film that keeps you glued to your seat.
So how does a film allegedly pull this off? Well, the source lays out a whole playbook of specific techniques. We're going to break down 3 of them. First, how you can blur the line between what's real and what's fake. Second, a so-called ninja technique for dodging criticism. And third, the very subtle art of the dog whistle. First up, blurring fact and fiction. Now, what's really interesting here is how this slide lays out the method. The film uses real footage of the 26/11 attack, actual news audio, even the names of real-life gangsters and police officers. According to the source, these real things act as an anchor, making it all feel authentic. Then, fictional stuff like a secret agent's made-up role or a minister being a traitor is woven right in. So if you're the audience and you're totally absorbed, the entire story can start to feel like the gospel truth.
And this leads us to what the source calls the ninja technique for deflecting any and all criticism. This really illustrates the alleged defense strategy perfectly. So if you ask the filmmakers about the facts, they can just say, hey, it's a fictional film. But then, if you ask them why they use so many real-life events, they can just pivot and say, well, it's inspired by real events. It's this perfect loop, right? It lets them claim the credibility of reality and the deniability of fiction at the exact same time.
Okay, the next technique is even sneakier. Beyond just the main plot, the source claims the film uses a tool called dog whistling. Now, this is all about sending these coded messages that most people won't even pick up on, but they're designed to hit home and resonate really deeply with a very specific audience. The name really says it all, doesn't it? A dog whistle uses language or images that seem totally normal on the surface, but for a certain in-group, they carry this hidden, often divisive meaning. To put it simply, it's a way of saying something without actually saying it out loud. The source points to quite a few alleged examples in the film. For instance, it claims that the terrorists only shout the religious slogan Allahu Akbar, but never a nationalistic one like Pakistan Zindabad. Or when a villain is killed, a Sanskrit shloka plays instead of something like Jai Hind. Then you've got dialogue that says India's biggest enemy is the Indians, or this vague talk about those people starting a riot. The argument here is that these aren't just random artistic choices. They're deliberate cues meant to frame the conflict along communal lines for an audience that's ready to hear it. But why does any of this really matter? I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a movie, isn't it? Well, the critique argues that these techniques don't just stay on the screen. It claims they have real-world consequences for our public discourse, for our history, and even for our national institutions. The source brings up this timeline to make a very, very specific point. Look, intelligence failures and terror attacks have tragically happened under multiple governments from different political parties. So the argument here is that to single out just one government and say its failure wasn't a mistake but an act of deliberate treason, well, that requires some extraordinary evidence. And without that evidence, the source claims, it's not analysis. It's a targeted propaganda choice. So according to the source, the alleged damage is huge. The claim is that the film defames public figures, it undermines people's faith in our intelligence agencies, it insults the memory of national heroes, and it desensitizes viewers by making extreme violence and the gangster life look, well, cool. The critique ends with a really powerful and, deeply controversial warning aimed at the director. It compares his legacy to that of Leni Riefenstahl, who was Hitler's infamous propaganda filmmaker. The message from the source is crystal clear. When all the dust settles, you won't be able to just claim you are only an artist.
And finally, the critique shifts from the filmmaker to the political leadership itself. And it ends with this really provocative question. It asks, once you've set the standard for filmmaking, what happens when the tables turn? What happens when a future filmmaker uses these same powerful techniques against you? It's a question that's not just about one film, but about the precedent and about the long-term cost of weaponizing cinema. It really leaves us all to think about where we draw the line between art, persuasion, and propaganda.